This week at Starbase, construction continues everywhere you look, test article ship 39.1 completes its test campaign, and the stacking of Booster 19 is completed in record time. With 2025 coming to a close, does SpaceX look to be on track for an early 2026 launch of the first Block 3 vehicles? Let's dig into this week's update and see for ourselves. Booster 19 entered the final stages of assembly at the build site this week, starting with the last section of the methane tank. 3 days later, the liquid oxygen header tank integration jig was brought into Gigabay 1, where it was used to help shuffle around the now stacked but still separate tanks before it was taken back out. The following day, on Christmas Eve, SpaceX announced that all of the booster's tank segments had been stacked, completing assembly of the booster's primary structures in record time. On Friday, a new ship aft flap was delivered to the build site as production of future ships continues even while awaiting the first flight of the Block 3 vehicles. While Booster 19 was being finished up, the next phase of Gigabay construction began. The west tower crane was raised, followed by the north crane, giving clearance for the third level of structural steel. The south and east cranes got the first work in on Gigabay's third level, placing the first columns and interconnecting beams near the outer edge of their build radius. Moving down Highway 4 to the launch site, more concrete work was done at the air separation plant site this week, with 2 pump trucks and multiple deliveries of concrete being made before the pour was wrapped up after several hours. Work at Pad 2 also continued as usual, with the installation of another protective door for the launch mount's booster support arms. The second new actuator for Pad 2's chopsticks was brought to the launch site, and workers began their efforts to install it the next day. It took them a good deal of effort to get the new hardware in place, but they managed to complete the installation that afternoon. A new bunker structure was delivered to the launch complex and has been staged outside at the Starhopper parking lot until its final location, wherever that may be, is ready. Moving back up Highway 4 to the Massey's outpost, the next segment of the new truss structure near the static fire test location was installed. We're still not sure what this structure is for, so if you have any ideas, let us know what you think in the comments. And test article ship 39.1, following its recent series of tests, was relocated from the Massey's outpost to the Star Factory following brief layovers at the Ring Yard and the Sanchez site. In our other space news this week, the Crew Access Arm was lifted and installed on NASA's Mobile Launcher 2, which will support future upgrades of the Space Launch System rocket in the years ahead. And speaking of SLS, NASA launch teams and the Artemis 2 flight crew performed a full launch dress rehearsal ahead of the mission's launch early next year, with the notable exception, of course, that the rocket is still in the VAB and not yet at the pad. The pad crews, astronauts, and Mission Control Center went through the full checklist that begins 5.5 hours ahead of launch and stops at T-minus 30 seconds before liftoff. It was a notable week for international launches, starting on Sunday with the 6th Japanese IQPS synthetic aperture radar satellite to launch on Rocket Lab's Electron from their launch site in New Zealand. A few hours later, JAXA launched their H3 rocket with the 5th Michibiki navigation satellite. Following a nominal liftoff, unfortunately, a mission anomaly took place at some point around payload fairing separation, resulting in an off-nominal fairing separation and critical damage to the second stage's hydrogen pressurization line. The H3 upper stage, which uses gas from the engine to keep the propellant tanks pressurized, was barely able to keep enough head pressure to finish the first of its 2 orbital insertion burns. And unfortunately, the engine was not able to relight for the second burn, and the upper stage and payload re-entered the Earth's atmosphere within 2 orbits. Hopefully JAXA can bounce back from this one and be back to flying next year. Now elsewhere on the Asian continent, the first Long March 12A rocket from the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation made its maiden flight this week, successfully reaching a nominal orbit. The booster, which is a modified Methalox variant of the Long March 12, made its first attempt at first stage recovery. During descent, one of the engines failed to ignite for the re-entry burn, and the booster was severely damaged, meaning it was unable to light its engine for the landing burn. It hit the ground and was destroyed several kilometers short of the designated landing zone, making this the second failed attempt at an orbital-class booster landing from China this year. But I'm sure they'll crack it pretty soon. They've got plenty of other opportunities coming up. The South Korean startup InnoSpace made their first launch attempt of the Hanbit Nano rocket from the Alcantara Space Center in Brazil. Using a hybrid motor burning liquid oxygen and paraffin, the rocket got above the cloud layer but unfortunately experienced a loss of thrust shortly after. It then fell back to the ground and exploded. In some more uplifting news, the Indian Space Research Organization successfully launched their LVM-3 rocket with the Bluebird Block 2 cellular communication satellite for AST Space Mobile. And finally for this week, in a surprise announcement, the United Launch Alliance stated that Tory Bruno has resigned from his position as their CEO to pursue other opportunities. A few days later, Blue Origin announced that Tory has joined the company as head of their newly formed National Security Group, bringing years of experience and defense industry connections to Blue Origin. And that'll do it for the final weekly space update here at LabPadre of the year 2025. As usual, if you want to keep up with all the goings-on here in the space world, make sure to click all those fancy buttons down there. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and I'm wishing you a Happy New Year. Thank you to all of our supporters, and until next time, this is Kaden, signing off.